And so the consumer wouldn't know this.
Good wheels aren't cheap and cheap wheels aren't good. 360 spin, 10 foot off the ground.
That must be pretty freaky.
Yep.
Today on the Stay Tuned podcast, we have a very special guest in with us who has been in the off-road racing industry for over 40 years. Their family has been through and through with this. They have brought a huge brand, which is Method Race Wheels, into Australia and sold racing wheels around Australia for some years. So today we have Clayton Taylor. Clayton, thanks for coming in, mate.
Mate, thanks for having me.
On this way. That's awesome. I'm super excited to have Method on here today and have a talk about your life and where you've got with Method and everything else in between. So I think it'd be really good to just give us an introduction into yourself and where you guys started from and go from there.
Yeah, well, how long you got? It's only about an hour and a half, isn't it?
But short version, maybe.
Short version? I don't do short versions
No, that's
of anything.
Cool. Do the long version. That's cool. We'll keep doing it.
Yeah. No, we look. Let's start from the start.
Yep.
My dad started off-road racing back in 1978.
Yep.
I stopped him from going to his first off-road race because I was born.
Yeah.
It was he never let me live that one down. But no, he started out in racing Bajas, Volkswagen Bajas. So
yeah, cool.
You can imagine back then the technology wasn't the greatest, but it was what it was, and they had they had just as much fun back then as what they do now. So
yeah,
it was like he was a battler. Mum and dad they were battlers. They did what they had to do to go racing and put us. We had 4 kids. It was Michael, Haley, myself, and Ryan.
Yeah,
and they just. Dad had Mum's drive car was actually a Volkswagen Baja as well.
Yeah, cool.
And so when it was race weekend, Dad would actually pull the engine out of Mum's road car, put it into his race car.
Dead set.
They'd go racing for the weekend, come home Sunday night, pull the motor out of his race car, put it back into Mum's car so she could take us to school on Monday.
That's wild. That's wild. That's pretty cool.
I mean, that's real sort of OG stuff, and and his passion for off-road racing never stopped. It was all the way to the day he died back in 2020. Like he was 66, he was still racing. He was still racing pro buggies.
Yeah, and
just loved every minute of it. Like that was, and obviously all us kids grew up with it.
Yeah,
we've seen the evolution of the.
So whereabouts did you grow up?
North side of Brisbane.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you've been here whole life.
Whole life.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
Yeah.
And where did you do a lot of like your practicing and bits and pieces? Did you have property or?
The thing with off-road racing is these cars are so time intensive to prep them and to run them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because it's the only sport in the world, like motorsport in the world, where you go out there to tear your car up.
Pretty much.
Everything wants to tear your car up. The track wants to tear your car up. Like the person who wins is the person who can drive the fastest, slowest. That's the...
that's awesome. I like that.
Yeah, so it's without the car braking. Like mechanical sympathy is something that just gets ingrained into your head. Like you could be driving anything, and you'll hear a little rattle, and you're like, "What's that?" Like, is that a Volkswagen gearbox about to blow up, or is it a a CV shaft about to give in?
Yeah,
it was but mate, it's been a journey, and it's
So you're at North Brisbane.
Yep.
And so you grew up there. And what age was it where you guys started racing yourselves? Like obviously your old man was into it, and were you in there pretty young? And
yeah, look, it was. There's a couple of funny stories that I'll get to later, but we drove as soon as we could.
Yep.
I think 16 was the age where you could drive an off-road race car in those days. So, but you could navigate at 12, which every chance Dad got, he'd put one of us kids in the navigator's seat,
Yep.
and it was pretty cool. And
did you find that he was just driving? Were you guys doing much, or were you just going along for the ride?
No, it's I mean, he'd been racing a long time.
Yeah.
But there's still tracks are long.
Yes.
Like the navigator.
Memory, you need to know what's coming up next.
The navigator's the driver's long range eyes.
Yeah.
So you're sort of sitting there, you're looking at the track ahead. The driver's driving what's in front. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and obviously, no one likes it, but sometimes you got cars catching you that you need to sort of look out for and work out whether you're racing for position or whether
times and all that sort of stuff. Yep.
Obviously you're watching your gauges to make sure the engine's not going to blow up and that sort of stuff. So, and even into now, they're running off GPS and, you're running Motec dashes and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot in being a navigator, and it was...
Surely you would have seen a lot of times change, like where you started from back then. Obviously, you're taking a motor out of your daily driver to then put it into a car, and growing up seeing that, and then to where it is now, like it's chalk and cheese.
Well, I'll put that into perspective. So when Dad first started racing, he would take the Volkswagen motor out. So you've got, what have you got? A couple of coil wires, you've got an accelerator cable.
Pretty simple.
You've got, a fuel line, and that's it. They're air cooled. So, you might have a couple of lines to the oil cooler. So you could do that in an hour. Now, if we want to pull the motor out of the buggy, it's a week.
Wow. So you've got to strip it down that far to get the motor out, because it's that entwined and everything. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So you could get it down to, maybe 3 or 4 days if you pushed it, but there's just that much in it. And once it's in, there's things you can't get to. So it's just a process, like Foz, our mechanic, he's just, mate, he's just so methodical.
Man, it'd be stressful when you get this car back together. It's race day the next day and the car's got an oil leak. And you're like, hey, like, what do you do in this situation, like, to get this car apart again? You just don't have the time in front of you.
You don't.
So you're like, hey, we're done.
Yeah. If that car's not rolling out of the shed ready, you don't touch it.
Yeah.
It's, not from an engine and transmission perspective anyway.
Yeah. So the pressure is immense on that particular part of it. So I guess, unlike other sports, they go, nah, it's cool. Overnight, we'll get a team of guys and we'll change the motor out. Happy days. We're good to go tomorrow. It's not like that. No. It's crazy.
Not at all.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know that was that entwined and in depth in the cars.
Yeah.
So.
And that goes back to the testing thing that you were talking about before. It's, like we might only run 5 rounds a year, but in between every one of those rounds, the car's only ready to go probably 3 days before we leave. Every time. You can sit there and go, we want to go and test, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It must be. So obviously you started driving, and was it, so all the basing around the race cars, it's all to do with off-road. Where did you start racing competitively? Like, when did that sort of start to come where you're like, hey,
look, because there was so many of us, right? There was Dad, Michael, Ryan, me, and Haley.
Yep.
And Haley didn't really show much interest in driving, but me, Michael, and Ryan did. And we all worked for the family business, and, we're all electricians by trade.
Yep.
So when we go away racing, the business stops. And we really didn't have the funds for all of us to go and...
So was it just like shared? Did you like rock, paper, scissors every time like you get to the track and like who's driving or who's navving?
No, look, we had 2 cars in the early days. So Dad had his car and he raced the Australian Championship pretty much every year from, I'm going to say, maybe the mid-'80s through to now.
Yep.
We haven't really missed an Australian Championship round, or a couple of rounds here and there, but it was, that was sort of where we were pretty serious. And then I bought myself a car. I don't know, I would have been maybe 19, I guess, 18. Yeah. And I ran the Australian Championship in that, and it was still Bahas back then.
So what engines were they in there? They're still the Volti engines up in them? Or
No, so we've gone from like Toyota engines, the 18 RGs, into Mitsubishi Cordia turbo motors, into rotaries, into... all sorts.
How was the rotaries?
Pain in the ass.
Yeah, right. Imagine the noise would have been immense. It would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, look, it's when you're doing a 500k race and you listen to that thing through your helmet for 500k's,
you're like,
it's pretty rattling.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine.
But let's face it, the rotary didn't normally do 500k's. So
yeah, definitely. Right. It was like, I imagine with rotaries, it was always a laughing thing about you put an hour meter on them. It's not about the kilometres; it's how long it runs for.
Yeah.
And doing those trips, I imagine that changing the cars with all these different engines, because your center point of gravity and the weight of these engines would all change, because they're all different. You're talking about a few different engines there. But how did you find, like, were they decisions that were made based on ruling, or was that just something that you found, hey, we wanted a more reliable setup, so we've changed and you're allowed to experiment?
No, that changed with cars.
Yep.
It was, like the car I bought had the 18 RG in it. It was reliable. It was good. It wasn't the fastest thing out there, but we won an Australian championship with it. Did the job. And then you sort of think, okay, well, I want to go a bit faster. So we had another Baja there that Dad raced, and then after that one, we bought the first pro buggy that we ever had, and it was built in the US, and it was ahead of its time, that car. But the Baja was sitting there, so that car actually originally had a 1600 Renault turbo motor in it.
Oh, right.
That one of Dad's mates built, and it had like the crankshaft in it was all hand ground, and it's a
special.
Yeah, it was a good little engine. I don't know if you remember the old stadium racing days with the Offroad, where all the US stadium trucks came over, and like they were big dollar things back then. And Dad used to race.
Is that when they first started coming over for the Finke and stuff like that? Was that sort of?
No. Well, Finke.
Because they had trophy trucks come over for that, wasn't that?
They had trophy trucks, but these were all bought by Australians. So the stadium trucks, the stadium series wound up in the US.
Yep.
And then a group of Aussies bought all these stadium trucks over, and they started a championship.
Yeah.
And they were racing at like your Parramatta Speedway, Newcastle Speedway.
Oh yeah.
Brisbane Showgrounds and all that, and it was cool. It was entertaining. There's big crowds, but Dad used to rock up in his Baja with the 1600 Renault turbo motor in it and race against these guys.
Yeah, right.
And he would always get the whole shot. He'd get a massive lead, and like they'd always wind him in. But the crowd just went insane. They loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what it's about, entertainment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess. So did you always drive? Did you find that you navigated at all? Or?
I did navigate.
Yep. Because I must find it, like I was saying before, like, is that for me, I'm like, when I see a car, I'm like, everything is telling me that I'm the one that needs to be driving. I'm a real bad passenger. I need a foot brake if I'm a passenger, where, it's definitely just a different feel of the car. So being a navvy, you're full trust, and you're staring down at your lap. And I can imagine, like, for me, getting car sickness, staring down at the computer all day long. I don't know if that happens at all, but
I don't know. For me, it didn't. It was like I navigated for Dad quite a bit. I navigated for Michael a bit. I was never brave enough to get in and navigate for Ryan. He's fast, so it was. It was like you're looking up. You're looking at arrows in front of you. Back in those days, we didn't have GPS. It wasn't allowed.
Yep.
So you're looking up. You're looking at arrows. You're looking at your gauges, and that was about it. But I think for me, I turned into a bad navigator because we had a couple of mechanical failures where we had a massive crash down in Mount Gambier back in, I think it was about 1999 in the pro buggy that we'd bought. So I think it was our second season in it, and it was the last round of the Australian Championship. We'd raced about 400 kilometres. We had 10 kilometres to go of the race, and if we had finished where we finished or where we were, we would have won the Australian Championship. And we're heading down this straight, doing about 220 k's an hour. There's these three whoops halfway down the straight. We've just been hitting them flat out all day. And left-hand side was a pine forest, right-hand side was just an open paddock. And as we've hit these whoops, the front left has just dived in. And it's just sent us into a 360 spin. We're 10 foot off the ground, gone into this pine forest, hit the pine trees side on. Buddy,
destroyed.
Yeah, like it. That car actually had a 6-cylinder Porsche engine in it, a 3.3 litre with Motec and stacks. And as the car's gone in and hit the tree, it's actually bananaed the car and just pulled the throttle, full throttle, and the thing's just sitting there banging off the rev limiter. We've got this tree falling on top of us. We're sort of shaking ourselves thinking, what the hell just happened?
And you were all fine in that crash?
Yeah, we both walked out.
Wow.
But I was never the same since.
So rattled from that?
Fully rattled.
Because you didn't expect it? Because you're like, hey, we've been doing the same thing. Was it mechanical failure going into that whoop that was a problem?
Yeah, so what it was, that car, it ran a coil carrier per corner.
Yeah.
And then it was actually the first car to ever run a bypass shock. So it was it ran Custer shocks, which Lance King, who is King Shocks, he used to work for Custer.
Yep.
So so they built the shocks for that car. But what it was, there was a braided line that ran from the shock absorber to the remote canister. That braided line just wore through on the bar work and dumped all the oil and gas out of the shock and sent us in.
Yeah, crazy.
So to put that in perspective, what was that, about 98, 99? So that was the closest we'd ever got to an Australian Championship outright. We didn't get it until 2022.
Yeah, right. So just get chipping away. Just keep
chipping
going,
away.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
it must
working on the recipe.
all the more, worth it once you get to the 2022 and you win that. That must have been pretty emotional to get to that point of going, hey, we're so close here and we've had to keep chewing away to get here.
Yeah.
To get back. It must have been, like, it's a big thing for your family, being so heavily involved in it. Must have been pretty special.
Oh, mate, it was. And look, I'll get a bit emotional here, but the last round was in Kalgoorlie in Western Australia.
Kalgoorlie, yeah.
And it was 2 years since we'd lost Dad.
Yeah.
And like this was his thing.
Yep.
It was
and
what he worked for, and so for us to all be there. Unfortunately, Hayley, she wasn't. No, I think Hayley was there actually. But like for our family to be there and to witness it, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, so that is cool. And so, do you have kids of your own that are in the sport and stuff like that, or have you continued that legacy? And
100%.
Yeah.
So, look, I hadn't driven a race car since, I'm going to say, maybe early 2000s, and my daughter, she wanted to navigate. We had a little Polaris sitting there, and she's like, "Oh, I want to navigate for you, Dad." I'm like, "Yeah, righto. I'll dust off the helmet and the gloves, and let's go and we'll just have some fun. Like no pressure, no.
Yep.
Like I can drive, but I'm not fast anymore.
Yep.
It's not it's purely just because my daughter said,
hey,
let's go and race.
Yep.
Let's go and do it. So I'm like, let's go and do it. My son, on the other hand, he started go-karting at the age of 6. So he'd sort of go-karted all the way through, and then he's gone into XLs, and he's been part of the Ferrari Academy in Formula 4 and raced Formula 4 overseas. And
cool.
He so now he's into the Toyota 86s.
Yep.
So he's got the first round.
That's completely different to obviously off-road. Like, when you're picking lines, off-road, different feel of car, the handle's completely different.
Mate, and
elements
for me,
are changing all the time.
Like, I ran him with the go-karts.
Yeah.
And, like he drives pretty good. And I'm pretty sure that's because he never had a good go-kart.
Yeah.
He was always making the best of what he had.
Yes.
And he can get in and drive anything, But don't get me wrong, like he's done speedway, he's done.
Yep.
Like we worked pretty hard with the AASA to introduce a kids class for off-road. So that's kids from 10 to 14. Because I got him into go-karts because there's nothing for him to do.
Yeah.
From a motorsport perspective.
Yeah.
So we put him into go-karts. And then I sort of thought, like, off-road racing, it's kind of like an old man sport. It's all older people coming in, and they sort of wondered why it died off a little bit for a while, and like it's pretty healthy now. But and I thought, like, there's no young ones coming through.
Yeah.
Like they can't even touch a wheel until they're.
Why do you think that is?
Because that's just the way it always was.
Yeah.
That was, and I sort of worked with.
There was not the opportunity there for them to jump in and do it.
No. And, like they could navigate at 12 years old.
Yeah.
But they couldn't drive.
Yep.
So I worked, I rang up, you might know him, Rob Chapman.
Yep.
So I rang him because he was pretty heavily involved with the running of the sport and whatnot. And I said, mate, why don't we see if we can get this over the line? He's like, I don't think it's going to happen. I said, come on, mate, we can do it. So we pushed. We pushed pretty hard, and we managed to get him over the line. And it would have been about, I don't know, maybe 2020, 2021 maybe, something like that anyway. And we finally got him over the line to say, okay, you can drive a non-turbo Polaris, you can drive, or UTV, up to 1,000cc.
Yes.
You can drive a Class 3 car or a Class 7 car. So Class 3's 1,300cc buggy.
Yep.
So sort of all your restricted type classes.
Yep. So you get more people in the sport.
Yeah.
Still doing the same thing, but just different speeds, I guess.
Yep. And they sort of ran off a different track, slightly different track to what the big guys are running, and like they were very nervous But you had to, the parent had to sit in the car with them, and someone that had an off-road license had to sit in the car with them. And, mate, to sit beside your kid, at that age in one of these cars, it was phenomenal. It was, I hated navigating. It scared the shit out of me. But, because he can drive far better than I can.
Yeah.
Probably even at the age of 12, he could.
Yeah.
And he's throwing this thing around. I'm like, dude, just slow down a bit. Come on. That's it.
Did you think, like, coming back to obviously the crash that you had in '99, do you think that slowed down your progression going faster? Like, do you think that was where the point where you went, hey, there was something there that was unpredictable that happened that really threw a spanner in the works, and it could have ended up nasty.
Yep.
And you go, hey, like, I always look at it when I was younger riding dirt bikes, I used to push until I come off.
Yep.
And then I'll have to, put the notches back up.
It's like strip it and back it off half a turn, right?
Yep. And then pretty much how you go. And then the problem is you build up the confidence again and you keep pushing. Yep. And I think it's not unless you're on that edge that that's where the fun is. And unfortunately, that's the dangerous part. So obviously knowing that to be in a racing situation is obviously a lot different, because you've got guys coming up behind you that they're putting pressure on you to exceed faster. And that must be a hard feeling to have, knowing that, hey, to be competitive, we need to up to this degree because these guys are coming in at this. That must be pretty hard to be pushing at that.
And look, I'm not going to lie. I started making excuses to not get back in the car.
Yep.
Like we'd get to a race and I'd be like, yeah, I'm right. And then I'd make an excuse not to get in the car.
Yeah.
It broke me. I was done. It was right there and then. I thought, I'm not prepared to take this risk.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between someone that can drive a car and a racer.
Yeah.
And it was right then. I'm like, I'm not a racer anymore. I'm done.
Yeah.
So my Link, he's keen as for it. My son, he's good. He puts the effort in. He's shown a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And mate, I have more fun watching him go around 100%. And improve than I ever did racing myself. So I'm happy.
Yeah, that's good. I guess that's being content with what you have and knowing that you've still got, been involved in it all. So you say about your brother is Ryan, is it that you said you wouldn't get in the car with him because he's just too fast? Is that something that, have you experienced before when you were younger with him where you jumped in, you went, nah, I'm done, like...
No, it's all just a progression of events, I guess.
Yep.
It's
because I see the benchmark, like it's the speed. Like, I mean, I talk about Finke because it's probably the most iconic race that we know of in Australia. It's what everyone knows of, even worldwide, is the Finke race. And you see some of the trophy trucks and the buggies that are going through. And there's this one part of the section, I'm not too sure what it is, but I've seen it many times on YouTube, and they're hitting that pin and it'll be top gear and they're just flat. And I don't know how fast they're going, but they come up to it and you see some of the buggies just crawling over, and then you see the guys that are into it and they're literally probably 1.5 meters, 2 meters in the sky, just flying for 100 feet, before they hit the ground. And I'm like, they're not lifting. They're just full noise. And you can hear in the air, they're just on the limiter. Yeah. As they go through there, like they're just like, it must be the fact that someone zip tied the throttle cable down and they're just holding on for dear life.
So that'll be the finish jump as you come into Finke.
Yeah.
So that's sort of it's
iconic.
It's iconic, 100%. And it doesn't really hurt the car. It's a pretty well set up jump. So it's there for the spectacle, and
it's a long progressive.
It's like a
soft landing.
Hell yeah! I've sort of made the halfway mark. Yeah, I'm going to send it, and then you do see some cars bin it when they do it, but it's all part of the part of the show. It's
definitely. It's crazy. Like I still look at them and I go, it still must have a fair bit of. I guess it's not even fear anymore. They're not even thinking about fear. That's not even. It's just, this is what I need to do, and to be here, I need to be here.
Yep.
And that's, I think, you look at race car drivers, they're not thinking about any other factor, and that definitely takes balls to be able to do that. You know, to see some of those.
And particularly in the off-road space, because there's some gnarly stuff out there. Like particularly at Finke, where you'd be barreling down a straight, you got whoops, 1 meter deep, over 1 meter deep. And you see like a dune coming up, and there's people everywhere, and those people are there for a reason. They're not there because it's boring. They're there because they know something's probably going to happen if they stay there long enough.
Yeah.
It's a
punishing thing, hey, for cars, to be hammering over them.
Yeah, and all those dunes look the same. So some dunes you can take pinned. Some dunes, there's a kicker. And, you hit it pinned, you're gone.
Yeah.
And they all look the same. You don't know which one's which. And unless you've got it marked, and now that you've got the GPSs and you can,
Helps, yeah.
you know, you can mark it on your GPS. But prior to that, it was all just up here.
So how was it this year? Obviously, Finke was only, a couple of weeks ago?
Yep.
How was this year at Finke for you guys?
From a race team perspective, it was, I mean, we had issues. So we pushed the rear main seal out on the way down. So had a little small fire, and that was it. So,
you
know, qualifying was interesting. Went out for the first quali, and a car rolled in front of them. So they got yellow flagged and held up. So they got another run. Went out for the next run. Car rolled in front of them again. Got yellow flagged and held up. So we just made the call. We could have gone for another run, but we just made, I think they were sitting in 15th at that time.
Yep. So you think you can make the ground up during the day?
Well, it wasn't dusty.
Yep.
So, you know, it wasn't dusty for a start. The prologue in these things, especially at Finke, it's like a top 10 shootout.
So I'm guessing when you mean not dusty is in the fact that, so those big long runs, you can make ground because you can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you've got dusty events, the cars start, say, a minute apart.
Yep.
You might be able to gain 30 seconds on them, but that's it. The dust gap's a dust gap.
Yeah.
You know, you're not getting any closer. So your race is sort of done.
Do you find you're racing different lines to try and get out of that dust gap?
There is no other line.
There isn't. It's just everywhere.
It's train tracks.
Yeah, right. So that must be hard in itself because you're hammering down these tracks doing, you know, 200K and you're like, man, I can't see shit.
Yep.
And that's where the navigators are going, freaking hell, I'm making sure that we're driving in the straight line. You know?
Right.
Like there's no corners coming up.
Yeah.
That must be pretty freaky.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had, was it 2022, I think it was. The boys were just about down into Finke. I think they were about 20 Ks out. And they'd caught up to a car in dust. And there was like a double left. And they hit the first apex but missed the second one. And they've blown the corner and gone into a tree. And they've taken out 2 tyres. You know, 2 flats.
Yeah.
So, you know, just like that.
Yeah, it happens.
Your whole weekend changes. It's, you know, like we only carry 1 spare.
Yeah.
So you got to drive 20 Ks with 1 flat. And
so what motors are they using now on the buggies that you have at the moment?
So the one we've got, we run the Alloy Tech, the V6 Alloy Tech.
Oh, yeah.
So it's twin turbo, D-stroke to 3.5 litre. So it runs billet crank and solid camshafts and whatnot. But yeah, it's a guy by the name of Stuart Knowles. He builds it for us. Mm-hmm. Very strong motor. Very strong motor. So we...
and you run them on fuel? Are they on pump fuel or are they?
No, it's 102 power.
Yeah, okay, 102. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the running systems, them all Motec would be running a lot of those systems and stuff like that?
Yeah, all Motec, Motec Dash.
I guess it runs pretty much nowadays with most motor vehicles you see on the racetracks. Motec definitely dominating the racing scene.
Oh, yeah.
And your competitors would all be much the same. So is that class open as far as engines go?
So they can run up to a 7 litre V8 or normally aspirated.
Yep.
And then 3.5 litre twin turboed or supercharged or whatever you decide you want to do.
Do you find that's better with, obviously with the turbocharged sort of things, is that you can add power and take it away depending on the day? Because you're like, hey, we don't need all this power. We can dial it back a bit. Like, do you have it set up on different modes as you're driving where you can dial back the power?
Yeah.
Like,
So
let's cool it back. Let's cruise.
Yeah. So we just run off low, high and medium boost. So obviously qualifying's high boost.
Yeah. But that must be a problem in itself. Like obviously having too much power can be an issue with traction and everything else. So it's like having that fine line, trying to work out what's quicker around the track.
Look, it depends on how the power is delivered.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of engine builders, they just go for the big number.
Yeah. Non-linear, so it's aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So that engine that we run, that thing sort of makes maximum torque at about 3,500 RPM.
Yep.
And carries it all the way through to 8,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, that thing just drives. You know, it's very drivable. It's a good motor. You know, runs a torque converter as well. So, you know, so it's manual shift, sequential shift with a torque converter.
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously, you know, you can
play with all that.
Dial out if it's got any lag, you can kind of dial that out with the torque converter as well. And
to help. That's really, really interesting. So, obviously racing's a big thing. I'm interested in how Method become part of this, because obviously Method is the name. Like every single freaking car that would come in would have a set of Methods on it. Like
except yours.
Except for mine at the moment. Yes, right. But I've probably had, how many cars have I had? And I'll tell you the reason why I didn't have Methods on this, because I was working with Roscoe at the time, and I'm like, hey, we went through so many different scenarios, and I'm like, yep, this is sort of what I want. The problem was the offset. Obviously, being the Tundra that we have at the moment and the offset of that wheel, I wanted the offset. It's at -12, so I wanted it to have that poke. It's got the guards on it, and obviously, being in the Australian market, we don't usually have cars with that sort of offset, especially with where the car was. I think it's POS 30 standard, or something along those lines. So it was only luckily that it was the aftermarket guards that were able to fulfill that, and that is really the only reason.
So I will work on that one for you, mate. We'll do your own wheel for you.
Well, that'd be awesome if you could. But looking at the rest of them, it's funny. Method definitely started a trend in Australia where probably just before COVID, I started to see a lot more of them coming through. And it was all 200 series, 79 series, everything coming through with Methods on it. It was like, you're not cool if you don't have Methods. Like that was just the bar that was there. And everyone had them. And it was funny that what I found was really amusing. Like there was so many other wheel manufacturers out there, but Method had a style, and they don't change their style much. It's pretty much, I could pretty much, pinpoint the 5 different styles that they have, and there's variations of them, but it's pretty simple like that. So I kind of like that, method of the fact that we always talk about.
There's a few other brands that like our styles too.
Yeah, look, I'm sure. But the fact that you've got that through was pretty cool to see. And obviously you guys have done really well with Method in Australia, because, a lot of decent shops around the joint are selling the product. They're doing the name justice with what they have out there on a lot of cars. And look, at the end of the day, I think that wheel was coming from like a trophy truck or off-road buggy sort of style, and putting it on, say, like a 200 series was, at that point in time, no one really did that. And when you did that with that wheel, it actually worked. It worked really well.
Yeah, and look, it's not just the style. It's the engineering. It's the manufacturing process. It's the design. It's and that's what sets Method apart. It's we've got the racing heritage. We've got that background. We've got that proven track record, and that brings a lot of credibility with it. Because you can know that whatever wheel goes onto your four-wheel drive has that same technology. There's not a piece of material in that wheel that doesn't need to be there. It's it's not like where other brands, like they'll just get a wheel, right, and then they'll machine the offset into it to whatever they want. They machine the PCD into whatever they want. But with Method, it's how it comes out of that mold is the wheel. That's how it is, because it's engineered. It's been tested. It's, the testing procedures are, they're second to none.
I'm pretty sure everyone's seen on the internet where they've seen other wheel manufacturers where wheels are falling apart, and they've got this tyre and the wheels in a million pieces just with the hub still bolted on or whatever, and all those horror stories. And I guess, as far as Method goes, you don't see that. Like, you can tell they're a quality wheel. There's no doubt about it. How did Method get to Australia? Like, was this a conversation, or, how did that start to get here?
So back in 2012, we had an off-road buggy built in the US, and it had Method wheels on it, and we went to the US to race it for the first race at the Mint 400, and car wasn't ready. So we're like,
what are you going to do?
What are we going to do? So I don't know if you've heard of Harley Lettner, but so the guy that built the car, Gene, he's like, I know Harley Lettner's got a spare car sitting in the shed. I'm like, okay, well, let's go have a look. And so we went and had a look at the car, and old Grandpa Lettner was there, and he's like, oh, so do you want it? And we're like, yeah, well, we're here to race, and we've got nothing to race, so we'll take it. And we're like, well, but we'll have to organise a transfer when we get back to Australia to pay for the car. And he's like, yeah, no problems. So he's let us take this car.
So he's like, yeah, no worries. Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah. So we ended up racing this car. Yeah. So Harley that we bought the car off, and Grandpa, they were sponsored by Method at the time. So we got the introduction there with the guys in the US, and we thought, well, we're running these wheels on our car. No one does them in Australia. So we sort of thought, oh, there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
So 2012, we bought our first pallet of wheels into the country. like we're electricians back then.
Yeah,
you know,
so
like,
it's funny, you're going from being sparkies and straight into selling wheels. That's completely different. I guess you knew it from racing, so it's you know the maths behind it and everything else.
Yeah, but we didn't know anything about offsets and bloody, you know, it was all just
an eye opener.
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of had to learn on the run, and you know, that was 2012, and it was sort of a hobby business up until 2017, and I was sort of working on the roof doing, you know, installing solar, and I was just like, I'm getting too old for this crap. You know, like my back was sore and my hips were hurting and crawling through roofs. And so we kind of made a decision there. And then we thought, okay, well, let's give this the attention it deserves. You know, like it started getting bigger in the US, and we had a really good relationship with the guys in the US, and we sort of all went from there.
Yeah, right.
So when I took over in 2017, and I was the warehouse guy. I was the...
So you start off small, so I'm still guessing North Brisbane started off small, bringing in small. And that would have been hard, because the hard thing would have been like, hey, what wheels are we bringing through with what offset, what studs, you know, for what car?
Yeah.
Like, what are we putting these on? What are you marking them at?
Oh, mate, we saw the Jeep wheels and we thought, yeah, the Jeep market's going to be massive.
It's not here.
No. So, you know, it was. I think we've probably still got a couple of sets of wheels from our first shipment.
Yep,
sitting there. You know, it's we should get them out and turn them into trophies or something and put them up in the showroom. But
and so obviously Toyota, you know, with Methods was probably a match mate, like everything that Toyota was, you know, Methods from what we've seen. Obviously, there's a lot of other brands out there that you see them on. I see, you know, the Nissans and so forth, but Toyota generally, for what we see, it was definitely Toyota dominated that with Methods.
Yeah.
So they would have been pretty good, because stud size and offsets, you knew that, hey, we've got a few choices so you could get. So how did you go? I mean, obviously you went from 2017 and starting to ramp up production, getting more wheels in. You know, they're coming in by container load, I'm guessing. Is that how you order them in?
Yeah.
And putting orders through. Where did you see, like, we're now in 24. Obviously, I imagine that from where you're selling now, you have quite a lot of distributors around Australia. I'd say you call them dealers or distributors, or
yeah, bit of both.
Yeah, and you would
stockers, distributors,
and you would have quite a few of them, because I do see
Yeah.
quite a lot of guys that carry Method wheels. So that must help as well with obviously getting the product through and make sure it's right. So you're ordering for them as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so we've sort of gone from, I'm going to say, 2017, we're probably 3 containers a year, and we're now 3 containers a month.
Yep.
So that's and growing.
Yep.
So it was, I guess that the turning point for us was when COVID hit. You know, we're of the belief, never waste a good disaster.
Yep.
So we kind of saw, you know, once all this COVID stuff hit and people are panicking and backing off and, you know, reducing their ordering, we're like, right, we're doubling down.
Yep.
And we just ordered, and it paid off. You know, it's there's a lot of sleepless nights, and I've got a good saying that if you're not crying yourself to sleep at night, you're not trying hard enough. And there was sleepless nights, but you know, it was all worth it. You know, like if you don't have that passion for what you do and the belief in your product that you've got, you're not going to take the chance.
And yeah, 100%. I think there's always risk with any of that. You know, there's no reward without it. It's just the way that it works. And obviously America's quite big. So Method, obviously they have other branches around the joint as well, around the world.
Around the world, yeah. So, I mean, they've got, I guess, distributors in each, in each country. We're the only ones in the world that have an exclusive distributorship with them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So is that based on a long-term, I guess, agreement, handshake, friendship thing that you guys have had going for so long?
Yeah, look, it started out as a handshake.
Yep.
Obviously, as things progress and,
it's a business, it's
you
more
put more on the line and, it sort of gets to a point where, look, hey, I'm about to invest a lot of money into this.
Yeah.
I need some kind of security.
Yeah.
That's But our relationship with those guys is phenomenal. You know, like that, we talk to them on a daily basis. You know, about what's going on in Australia, and you know, if we need to work on a new wheel for
X, Y, Z car.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Like the wheels that we have made specifically for us.
Yes.
Is second only to what's made in the US.
Yeah.
So it's they see the value in the Australian market, which a lot of American companies are now. Like they're all, I don't know, I feel like a lot of them are feeling like they're saturated where they are now, and they're all branching out into Australia as their next big market. So I sort of, you hear a bit around about, Australia's just a blip on the map to a lot of these guys in the US, but it's certainly not the case. It's they're taking Australia seriously, and but you look at the US and say California, for example. I think they got 29 million people in California.
Yeah.
And their rate of modifications on their four-wheel drives is probably a quarter of what we've got over here.
Wow. So it's just that, yes, the population is there, but as far as those modifications go, are not the same. So that's really interesting, because that's something that I haven't really heard of before, but that is really interesting.
Yeah.
I guess that's what we had with the trend that we have here with obviously full driving, caravan, touring, all that sort of stuff. It all blends in.
Yep.
And when you bring in the racing scene with method wheels, and it sort of all makes sense.
Yes.
It's the same thing, and I guess as much as you're using those wheels to be reliable on the track, the last thing you want is any wheel problems. And they're taking the brunt of the force, like they're the first thing. And to be able to complete races without having problems, then to put them on a car, that guys are touring in Australia. Yeah, okay, we're not doing 200 Ks with the caravan on them, but we still have that load. There's still a lot of weight on them. And the weight has increased over time tenfold. So,
and you got to remember too, old grandma and grandpa, not even grandma and grandpa anymore, anyone towing their caravan, like they're not professional drivers. They're not sitting in there with their race suits on and their helmets on and their harnesses.
Yeah. So when something goes wrong, it's going to be pretty dangerous.
Yeah. And, it's even the caravan wheel market, it's a can of worms.
But I see a lot of the wheels on caravans that we see, obviously steel wheels, very cheap wheels as well that are on them. That's interesting in itself. I always wonder about that and the reliability of how they are, especially where they tend to go and so forth. And I don't know much about that space, so I can't really comment on it. But do you find that you're selling more wheels also for vans in that sort of style now?
Yep. That
to get that reliability with the wheel and everything else? Yep.
100%. And look, it's as I said before, like the people towing these caravans, they're out on a holiday. They're having the time of their life.
Yeah, they don't want problems.
The last thing they want is for their caravan to drop a wheel or the tow car to drop a wheel.
It's so dangerous at the same time.
100%. And like a lot of these caravans, they're bigger than the cars.
Oh, yeah.
So as soon as the tail starts to wag the dog, they're in trouble.
I don't know how many times I've seen on the news where you see vans down just the Bruce Highway alone just teared all over it, from an accident that's happened, either being overweight or having a blowout or something along those lines. Definitely noticed that, the towing that I've done, I don't have the rigs that are as big as some of these other ones, but there's been hairy moments where you'll get a gust of wind, whatever, and you got to grab the wheel and you're like, whoa, and you sort of settle it down really quickly and try not to in-steer into it. And I can imagine, having a blowout on a caravan. Yeah, I don't think that most people. Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to control. It's nearly going to be game over. So trying to have that, even if you blow off a tire, at least you still got a rim there holding it. It's when you drop the whole axle down on the ground, then I think you got a big problem. So I can understand why the caravan market getting quality back into them, making sure that they have problems would definitely be the way to go. So it is an interesting method to have a wheel that they're obviously looking at and that range to fit that, because it's a little bit different with offset stud patterns, because between all of them now there's a fair bit going on there that's different. They usually find that, I'm sure there's manufacturers out there now starting to mimic some of the stud patterns and offsets of the cars as well, and trying to make it all unique. You find that you're selling two different sets of wheels usually, or like for example running like say Land Cruiser sort of stud pattern with C bearings or something like that on a caravan.
Yeah, look, if you run good wheels and tyres, you only need, maybe your tow car, you need a couple of spares or whatever, but you just don't see the flats.
Because you would see travelling out to do all these races, like you would spend a lot of your time with your tow vehicles. I understand you rocked up today in your 2500, which is a huge rig. How do you find that car? Like, I mean, obviously getting off the wheels, but finding that car with the size of it is, I mean, you got methods on it. Is that the car you use as a tow vehicle at the moment to do your towing your buggies and bits and pieces?
So we've got the truck that we tow the race car around with.
Yep.
We do have enclosed trailers, and, we've got the big chameleon trailer there that we drag all the swags around with for Finke and that sort of thing. So, I do use that for towing, and for outback trips. And just to, I hit this kangaroo on the way out to Finke, and the bonnet on my truck probably stands to my neck.
Yep.
And I was staring eye to eye with this kangaroo. It was a monster.
Yep.
And it was a rogue, the rogue ones that just sort of hop straight across the road. They don't care what's in front of them. They're just I need to get from there to there. And I'm going, I don't care what's in front of me. And I saw it. It was right there. And I'm like, holy hell, hang on, Millie. We're going to hit this thing. And just bowled him over. And not an ounce of damage. He went all the way down the side. Every
bit of him.
Poor bastard, every tyre got him, and car and trailer. But it just didn't do any damage. We just kept going.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, we hit this little kangaroo with our truck, and it took out the radiator, the intercooler, the fan shroud, the whole deal.
Yeah.
And they were outside of Barcaldine.
Yeah.
And at about 8:30 at night. So they just had to park up on the side of the road. And
you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to get my wife. So this was on Sunday night, and I'll start the story again. So we were driving. I was in front in my truck, and then we had the Iveco transporter truck behind us about an hour or so, and then Ryan was in the F250, just sort of travelling with those guys. And I'm cruising into Emerald, and I send Ryan a text message, and I said, do you want me to book you a room for the night? And he goes, no, we need to push on. We need to be in Alice Springs by Tuesday. I said, okay, no worries. So anyway, me and my daughter Millie, we pull up at Emerald and we go get a feed at the pub. We go back to the hotel room, just lie down watching a bit of TV, and 8:30 my phone rings. I'm like, it's Ryan. He's like, we've had a disaster. I'm like, yeah, what's that? And he goes, we hit a kangaroo. I said, yeah, that's all right. And he's gone, no, it's taken out the radiator, the intercooler, the fan shroud, the whole lot. And I'm like, that's a problem. So anyway, that was Sunday night. So we wake up Monday morning, and we start cruising around Emerald trying to find parts for it. And there's nothing.
Can't find nothing.
Nah. And we're on the phone to Iveco, and they're like, no, we can't get you parts for 3 days. And I'm like, nah, that's no good to us. And we just kept ringing. So we ended up finding some aftermarket parts out of Brisbane.
Yep.
So I thought, all right, no worries. So the fan, we could only get the intercooler and the radiator. So they've cable tied the fan together and
made it work. Bushman steel.
Yeah. So then my wife, she goes, picks up the parts from Darra in Brisbane, drives to the airport, jumps on a plane to Emerald with the radiator and intercooler. I meet her at Emerald Airport.
Yep.
She flies back to Brisbane. Me and Millie, this is about 4:30 in the afternoon. Me and Millie drive out to the truck where it is parked on the side of the road. We get to them at about 8 o'clock at night, fix it. But I think we leave the side of the road, I don't know, maybe 11 o'clock. And then we start driving into Barcaldine. As we're driving into Barcaldine, that's when I hit that route. I'm just like, Jesus, these things are just going to take us out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway,
I guess that it's really funny because, you need a truck, and it's really hard in those remote places when you break down. It's interesting that being in the American car that you've got would have been interesting to see if you had something more severe like that, where a radiator popped or an intercooler or something. It's not like you can just get one from around the corner. I guess I'm biased. I love Toyota, and I love the fact that yes, they're not the most fanciest cars in the world, which I like the simplicity, because I'm a big believer in simple is reliable. If you overcomplicate something, you'll find that there'll be problems.
Yeah.
But if I ever break down or I have a problem, I can pretty much guarantee that the farmer on the side of the road's got something in his shed. Do you know what I mean? It's just nearly a guarantee.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that everything's metric and, thread pitch and sizes and everything that I know that it work with. When we start talking in imperials and stuff, it just annoys me. It just irks me. I don't know what it is.
I think it even annoys the Americans, doesn't it?
Oh, probably. It's one of those things that I just go, I don't understand. Why do I need to carry all these tools? I just want a metric set. And by Toyota, I can carry one metric set with me, and I can pretty much rebuild that engine. Not quite, but pretty close.
I think I'd need more than a toolkit to rebuild an engine though.
A
bit of knowledge wouldn't go astray.
But
you're right, like with the last year on the way back, so we did Finke last year. I took the GMC, and Link was racing his XL up in Darwin, so we dragged the trailer with his XL up to Darwin.
Yeah, cool.
Did that race, and then we're driving back. And the plan was we were going to stay at Barclay Homestead for the night. And we got about 100 k's north of Three Ways, and just this massive plume of white smoke coming out the exhaust. And so I just had it on cruise control, cruising along, and then sort of felt a bump, and then there was a vibration, and then sort of took it off cruise control and sort of see what was going on. And yeah, it just bloody blew white smoke. It was a bit of a disaster, like we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yep, sounds
I
bad.
mean, I don't care what car it is. Nothing was going to fix that.
No, 100%.
But
so what was the problem with that at the end?
I think it cracked a piston.
Yeah. And look, these things definitely happen. I think anything mechanicals is prone to break. Obviously with buggies, you would know that more than anyone. And eventually that's the thing. But it's those situations where you go, hey, I'm stuck. And yeah, look, if you're in a Toyota or any other model of car, it wouldn't have made any difference in that situation. You're still stuck.
Yeah.
The downside,
in the middle of nowhere, phone service.
I guess we had a customer that had F350s. They used to do the golf trip and tow up there, and they used to go hunting and so forth. And they ended up getting rid of the 350s and getting back into Chop 200 series. And this was some years ago. And the main reason I was confused because as far as the American trucks go, that you have awesome tow rig. I don't think you can get a better tow rig to carry the weight safely. They are awesome for that.
Yeah.
It's just we don't have the support for the cars here in the large volume yet. I think it'll take some years to get that. But his biggest problem was they did a wheel bearing. And it's something simple. These were new trucks, did a wheel bearing on one of them. And it was 3 weeks to get a wheel bearing from the States out to the north of Queensland to get it then fitted and all that sort of stuff. And it was a bit of a pain.
So
and that was back then.
What caused the wheel bearing to go though? Like, is it...
Look, I wasn't real too sure, if it was running the different offset of wheels or whatever the problem was with that scenario, because I didn't see those F350s. But however, that was then fixed. He said on the way back home, then had an issue where they blew, transmission line. Now, ultimately that transmission line was rerouted because of the conversion. So again, not really a fault of Ford or anything like that, but it was a problem that happened. And he said we were just stuck all the time. And he goes, it really wrecked the trip because now extended like nearly a month onto our trip where we didn't plan for that. And he said, so we jumped back in the 200s because, hey, we know there's possibilities things can go wrong, but we can get it sorted quickly and get moving again. And that was something that, I wasn't aware of. But I still believe if you're towing big, heavy loads like you guys are regularly, I think those trucks do it so well. You know, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
But the one thing, with having the Tundra and so forth is what I get annoyed with is parking. Like, the thing's just so big. Like, I've never parked cars in my life where I have to nearly do a 2-point turn every single time I park now. I can't just roll into a park and be dead on because I'm on both lines.
Yeah.
I'm either just over one line, I've got to repark again and position myself. And I look like an idiot half the time.
Yeah.
And going for something.
I'll give you a hint. Always park at an island. So
so you've only got
on the island.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And then you hang up half on it. Yeah.
And so
you become the master of creating your own park.
Yeah, I get that. And parking away from everyone trying to find the right parked park.
Yeah. And take your Jenny hitch off so people don't drive into it.
Yep. Yep, and smash through. Yeah. And that's the funny thing is because they are so much longer and wider. And I guess you guys would be able to get wheels for those cars so easily because Method in America, they would support them to the cows come home. That's their cars. That would be their new bread and butter with a lot of those American trucks.
Yeah.
So when you look at a wheel that's been put onto those cars with the weight that they carry, I mean, some of those guys are carrying huge weights, you obviously know up to the task, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, our HD wheels for those trucks are 4,400 pounds. So they're rated to like 2,200 kilos.
Yeah, that's per wheel, isn't it? That's how it works.
Yeah, so it's huge load ratings.
Obviously something that I see everywhere. If you look at all the race events, Method is plastered everywhere. You've got flags and banner. I think we're going to one of the farm fests shortly, and we've seen that big arch you've got with the Method. We've actually got one of them coming with all of our stuff on it, which it stands out. You've got the cars and everything set up. How do you go through choosing the people that you sponsor with Method and those companies, and what are you looking for, especially, to make sure that the brand is, obviously.
Well, I guess as much as you want to say yes to everybody and help everybody out, because we've been there, right? In our early days of racing, it was sponsors were everything. You know, like you couldn't if you could get $5,000 out of someone,
Yep.
it was like gold.
Yep.
You know, it got you to a point where you thought, you know what, we can keep doing this.
Yep.
And for us to be in a position now where we can sort of start giving back to people, you know, what these guys gave to us in the early days.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty special for us because we know what motor racing means to people. We know that, and
they're not there making money.
they're not there making money. They're doing it for the passion.
Yep.
You know, and that's what this shit's all about. It's helping the people with the passion to get to where they want to be. So I mean, we don't necessarily go for, you know, we don't see someone and go, oh, they got 200,000 followers. We're gonna back them.
Yep.
You know, we don't look to go to the famous people.
Yeah,
we would
that.
rather get in early and help make them famous.
Yep.
You know, get them to the point where they want to get to. So I guess from a sponsorship and we sponsor a lot of events, which, you know, we give prize money at Finke.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of unheard of in Australia to get prize money for an off-road race. And at the end of the day, you know, that gives back to the community. And, you know, whether it's they get the prize money and they go put it on the bar at the presentation, or whether it helps them get to the next race.
Yeah.
The whole community's still benefiting from it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's sort of that's the big thing for us.
Yeah, so it's not just one set thing, is like, because obviously whatever the price money may be, it's a minimal contribute to the whole thing. You know, there's so much more money that's involved because it's expensive.
Oh yeah.
You know, like having a buggy, or I think having any race car, even when you look at go-karting, like I've seen somewhere where they were talking about go-karting on a professional level and how much it costs, you know, it's not cheap.
Nope.
And so you're looking at that in a buggy, you know, you've got your trucks, your cars, and your time, like, you know, how much time, like, you're traveling to these events around Australia. Like, do you like driving? Like, I mean, I would be like bored out of my mind for that many hours just driving all the time. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, look, I love doing road trips.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. But, you know, I drove to Adelaide for my son to race at the Bend in his 86. And then I got back from there, and then the next week I was driving out to Alice Springs for Finke. And then I got back from Finke, and I was meant to drive down to Phillip Island, but I just pulled the pin on it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. You know, like, we're in Townsville next week.
So it's so pretty much you guys are full driving and camping all the time, really.
Yep.
Because like wherever you go, you're going to be setting up as that's like, hey, this is home for tonight. We've got to get here, and you can't always get to those other towns that you need to get to. So you probably find yourself time where you're sleeping in the car and stuff like that. Is that sort of how it works? Or
yeah.
You've got,
Yeah. It's sleeping in the car is not unusual, that's for sure.
So do you ever find in your downtime that you go camping? Like, is that something that you do? Yeah, you still do it. Yeah, cool. That's awesome. So even though you
takes a bit of talking the wife into it, but
yeah, for sure.
I've been trying to plan a trip up to the Cape or across the Simpson for about 10 years, so we'll try and make that one happen pretty soon.
Yeah, see, my idea, I thought, I'd love to do the Cape, and I'd probably find I would fly up to Weipa, and I would buy myself the oldest Toyota I could find, do the Cape, and then fly back home. I think the drive in between...
And just leave the car on the side of the road.
Pretty much. I thought I'd give it to someone. I'd say, hey, man, have the car. Like, that's... And I'd love to take it on face value, because I think that grabbing a car, not knowing the quality or what it is, and making it there and back in this old busted ass piece of shit would be really cool, because it gives you a bit more of adventure. And I think that's what it's about, not so much just doing it. Or we see some really kitted up combos.
It's the journey, not the destination.
100%.
Right?
And it's not, you know, these cars get destroyed a lot of the time. They come back and you go, oh yeah, we went to the Cape, and you look at the car and it's like, you know, just everything is just damaged. You know, they definitely cop a beating. And it's not so much, I would just like to experience it more the rough version than the more glamour version with doing something like that. Yeah. And I think it would be more exciting. I don't know, Mrs. would definitely not be happy with that idea. But yeah, I think it would be something pretty cool to do. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's have another podcast in a few years and see if you've done it.
Oh, look, that's the funny thing is, I think work takes over. Life takes over. There's always something that you want to do, but it's having the time and actually making the effort to do it, which is I think is the hardest part.
Yeah. Business and family.
100%. Yeah, without a doubt. Next one will be future off-road racing. Where do you think that it'll be in the next 10, 20 years? Do you think it's something that will continue, or you'll see it sort of phase out? Like if we start looking at other motorsports, there has been motorsports in Australia that sort of come and go. If you look at Formula One at the moment, they're getting a lot of traction. There's obviously been a lot of money pushed into that. If you only go back sort of 5 years ago, Formula One wasn't that big. It definitely was a pinnacle in a lot of motorsport, but they've done a lot around that. I think from an entertainment point of view, where do you see off-road racing?
Look, I think from a technology perspective, where does it stop? It just keeps evolving. It's phenomenal to see, from where we started back in 1978 to now, and just to see the progression and the technology, and it's just.
Do you ever think there's a point, like obviously the cars are getting quicker and quicker and quicker, and more technology? There has to be some sort of limit. I always look at where's the limit where the cars can't physically go any faster because the conditions that you're in. You can only have a shock absorber working so well on different crazy suspension setups and powerful engines and stuff to be able to get a human to be able to drive it around.
But it's up to the imagination, isn't it?
100%, yeah.
I guess, with what you do every day.
Yep.
It's all up to your imagination to where it ends.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is.
And I don't see off-road racing and suspension and
being any different.
Power being any different.
Yep. Just experimenting and keep pushing forward with it.
Yeah.
Future for method and the wheels. Obviously, I'd love to know a little bit more about what's on the horizon there, and also why I need methods on my Tundra. Obviously, you spoke at the start like, hey, we could probably make some wheels up for that car. I'm definitely very interested, but I guess from the viewers and everyone else listening is I've run Method, never had a problem with them. I love them. It was purely an offset thing for me.
Yep.
But to get back to Methods, to be reassured by it, is there something that you can tell us a bit about, the manufacturing process and the technologies and what are they investing in?
Yeah, look, it's from our perspective, the wheels, they're engineered in-house. They're designed in-house. They're tested in-house. They're also tested by a third party, and they're also tested at the factory. So, when
quality control, you mean like it's up there?
Yeah. So when you get a load rating stamped on the back of a wheel, the industry standard is for it to be tested on a 33-inch tire. We test on a 37-inch tire. So essentially, any vehicle that needs a load rated wheel, no one's running on a 33-inch tire. They're all running over. So
yeah, of course, everything that comes in nowadays, I think 35 is the new benchmark. 33 was a few years ago.
Yeah,
definitely 35.
100%. So all the testing is done on a larger size tire. All the rotations, the testing procedures, they're all done to almost double what the industry standard is. So when you test a wheel, they say, okay, well, we need 1,500 kilo load rating. So they'll set it to 1,500 kilo. They'll get to there. It's not a destructive test. If that wheel gets to 1,500 and the amount of cycles that it needs to cycle through, that passes. So you don't know where your redundancy is.
Yeah.
Because they've tested it on the industry standard size tyre, 33-inch tyre. They've done it to the amount of cycles that the standard says you need to. But where's the redundancy?
I guess how does and so the consumer wouldn't know this because it's not something publicly, a company's not come out and say, hey, we just test on the bare minimum. Right. And then you guys are testing at a higher standard to ensure the wheel's quality. And I guess user going, hey, we just don't want problems. We want to make sure it's better than what, we can produce. But I guess that's a scary thing is that you don't really know. And I've always wondered, a lot of different wheels, you think of the weight that's on them and something were to go wrong. It was interesting back in the day, my wife had a Magna and that was, back in 97. And she literally went around a corner and I was driving beside her at the time in my own car. And it was a 5-spoke wheel.
Yep.
And no shit, the spokes broke off the wheel and the wheel come off the car and went into a retirement village. And luckily, as she was turning around the corner, she was only doing probably sort of that 40, 50K an hour and just pulled over to the side.
Yeah.
But the whole hub was gone, the wheel was gone. And I was shocked. I'm like, how did the wheel just come off? Now, obviously, there must have been some pre-fractures there in that wheel. And it could have been from an issue of hitting a pothole at some point or from whatever that was. There was no physical damage to the end of the wheel. However, when you looked at the casting on the spokes, you could see how there was dry spots on the casting where it was only just hanging on by a small amount.
Yeah.
And it only took one to sort of break off and it this cascade effect.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the testing, I'm sure if that was put through something similar, it wouldn't have passed. It just would have failed.
No, exactly right. And, I guess that's sort of where the FEA testing comes in, and that's come a long way over the years as well. So and most wheel companies are doing that now, which is good. But as far as the load testing goes, I really feel like there's going to be some issues.
Yeah.
So, but we'll just keep doing what we do. We make a quality product, and we stand by it, and we can go to sleep at night knowing that it's what we sell.
Yep.
is going to do the job for people. So that's.
And is there any, as far as design goes, like I always see, I think Method go a few different designs. Is there stuff in the future they're looking at changing and bringing out new sort of more range to them, or are they looking at, because I see they've sort of got more coloured selections and obviously a few more different models coming through, but they seem to be pretty selective. Like they hang on, they go, hey, we will bring one model out and tweak it a little bit and be like, hey, this is what we'll do.
Yeah. And look, the most popular wheel for Method is the 305 NV by far. And that was one of the first wheels ever built.
It was on freaking every car.
We could have built a business just on selling that wheel.
One wheel, that's crazy.
So it's obviously there's the timeless designs.
Yes.
But you still need to stay relevant as well. And I can tell you now, I'm glad I'm not a wheel designer.
It's funny. I was looking at a Matchbox car the other day, and I could have sworn it had Methods on it. Not the name, but there were Methods wheels on a Toyota car. And I'm like, even they know that Methods go with Toyota. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was really funny. Like, I'm sure there was copyrights and stuff. No, I was just looking at it going, man, that's crazy. Like, it was a picture that went, hey, that just works. You know what I mean? Which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. It's cool to see what's exciting, and I think.
But from a design perspective, from an engineering point of view, you've probably seen the bead grip technology that we've released. So I guess, you've got your bead lock wheel that race cars, off-road race cars use. So now Method have patented the bead grip technology. So it's sort of on the inside of the wheel.
Yep, I did see that. Yep.
Yeah. So we've had customers that have run them down at 0 PSI and still haven't debeaded the tyre.
Yeah.
You see a lot of race teams are using them now as well. A lot of side-by-sides. There's trophy trucks in the US that have run an 18-inch version on their trophy trucks with a 42-inch tyre.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And not having punches and stuff like that and still being able to keep them on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, it's...
I guess the thing is that that's something that Method are bringing to the table that's different, is because they have raced these wheels. They have race teams. They understand. We sort of partner up with Triple Out Racing, and it's funny when you take that racing and you're looking at that level of trying to things at the best, they're scraping for the 0.1s, but they need it to be reliable. They need it to tick all these boxes.
Yep.
So you're dealing with completely different sort of breed of how you manufacture a component now.
Yep.
And that's something that's pretty exciting, because I see that's where Method have that advantage of, racing and then having a wheel to be suitable for that, and then bringing that into a production car. It's a no-brainer.
And wheels are a big thing with a race car, as you probably know. Like the unsprung weight on a race car changes everything. Like with the off-road buggy. So we used to run the 37-inch, the same tyre we run on the back, the 37-inch mud tyre. We used to run that same on the front, and the 6.5-inch wheel, and they're heavy. Like we run the same wheel, but the tyre is heavy. We've got a sister company to Method is Tensor Tyre. So they build purpose-built off-road race tyres. So we've put this tyre on the front, and we've dropped, I'm going to say, probably 12 kilos a corner just by changing to that tyre. So with the buggies, there's no weight in the front of them. So for every kilo you've got unsprung, you need that weight on the front of the car to even try and make it work.
And I don't think people realise that with the weight of a wheel and how it affects the car. Everyone talks about size and ratios and stuff. It's actually the weight's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always see. And you got a lot of those tyres out there that are quite heavy. Like you get a combo, you pick up a 37, they're not light.
No.
So it's interesting.
And that's why part of the manufacture process is that, in those wheels, there is not an ounce of material in there. It doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And it gets tested. It's just because we take it out, it then gets tested, and it gets put through the load rating test, and it gets put through the real world test in race cars. And it's really
cool to see. Really cool to see.
Good wheels aren't cheap, and cheap wheels aren't good.
Yeah. That's exactly right. All right. So this last thing, we got this rapid fire for you.
All right,
so
hit me.
We've got 15 questions, right? You just got to answer which one it is. So, all right, we'll start off with the first one. Off-road and on-road, or on-road, sorry. Which one do you choose?
Off-road.
Off-road. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Sand or dirt?
Dirt.
Baja or Dakar?
Baja.
Baja. Baja. Yeah, see, I told you I can't read properly. Morning person or night person?
Morning.
Manual or automatic?
Both.
Both? Okay, interesting. Petrol or diesel? That's a hard one, isn't it?
It is.
Because you drive the diesel and
I drive a diesel and race a petrol. That's both.
Both. Mountains or ocean?
Ocean.
LS or Barra?
LS.
Land Cruiser or Patrol?
Cruiser.
Beach holiday or snow holiday?
Beach.
Turbo or supercharger?
Turbo.
Pizza or steak?
Steak.
Oh, come on, pizza. I love pizza. Trophy truck or buggy?
Buggy.
Oh, there you
Buggy
go.
talk from way back.
Yep, fair enough. No, that's cool. Well, mate, thanks very much for coming in. It's been awesome having on you here about your story as well as Method and how that's brought into Australia. I think you've brought an amazing brand into Australia. It's obviously quality. I think anyone can vouch for that and see that. Yeah. So, and appreciate your time, giving us your background story. So we wish you all the best and good luck this weekend and we'll go from there.
No, appreciate it all. Thanks for having me. And I've got a few more stories to tell next time if you want.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll get you on again. Happy days. Well, what a great episode that was with Clayton Taylor. Method Racing Wheels, been through Australia, through and through, an amazing brand with an amazing story to go with it. If you would like any more information on our podcast, please leave in the comments. Other than that, like, share, subscribe, and thanks for staying tuned.